Hi, my name is Chiwaya. I'm a student at the School of Professional Studies, and today I'm talking with Tanya Fields. Can you tell me a little bit about a couple of projects you're working on right now?
So we are actually working on several projects. Really, these projects are under the purview of what our mission is, which is to provide economic development opportunities for marginalized women and youth in low-income neighborhoods that really harness the local good food movement. So to that end, our biggest project right now is our mobile market project. It's really important for us to look at food not from this perspective of charity and social services, but to think about food really as an economic development opportunity, right? And I think that when you look at all that's going on right now, and there's all this discussion around deconstructing our food system, creating a new food system, alternative food system, you really, for me, it's really important that we make sure that the folks who are the most impacted currently by a poor and broken food system are the folks who are leading it. And so for me, it's not like let's just bring in more food stamps and let's just create more pantries, which are great safety nets that are supposed to be short term. But creating opportunities that allow people to have more disposable income, create pathways out of poverty, and then feel more invested in actual holistic health and good health, and that includes healthy food. So the Mobile Market Project is this school bus that we have, this old school bus,
Right.
Former school bus, let me not say old, that we are repainting, and we're going to trick out, so,
And you recently had an event a couple of weeks ago, right?
Yes, we did. We had a Meet My Bus event where we invited people here to our office. We had the bus parked down outside, and we invited folks to get on the bus. It's still very raw, and then just envision and give us feedback around what they think the bus would look like and how it would best serve the community. And then we invited folks up for like food and drink and all that kind of stuff, because that's what we do. We feed people. So we are gonna pimp this bus out with solar panels, and we just dropped it off to get to convert the diesel engine, to take used vegetable oil versus just regular biodiesel or regular diesel, because it's really important that it be sustainable. Transportation of food is probably a very large culprit in terms of contributing to climate change. So we wanted to make sure we also thought about sustainable means to get this food into a community that's already overburdened environmentally, putting in shelves and storage, cutting out new windows so that we can serve curbside, and then supporting local growers in rural New York, engaging urban farmers in New York City, and then channeling this food through this innovative distribution and retail stream, which is the mobile market. And then we hit 3 different communities 3 times a week in the South Bronx to make sure that we essentially set up right at their doorstep to give them access to high quality, pesticide free, affordable produce.
Right. You seem very passionate about
So passionate.
about the projects you work with. Why the South Bronx? Why did you choose this particular area?
They say charity starts at home. I like to say empowerment starts at home.
Yeah.
This community, I kind of fell into this community after being gentrified out of Harlem 11 years ago when I started my family pretty young. I don't know if I would say it welcomed me with open arms, but it certainly learned to accept me, and I certainly learned to accept it. And so when people think of the Bronx, it's really, it's hard for me to be a resident, not because the Bronx isn't a wonderful place, but because I know that it's a wonderful place in spite of and because of many of its circumstances. And so, I'll go on Facebook, and there's at least 3 jokes a day that I see where the South Bronx is the butt of that joke. Right. Or I have community residents that talk about how dismal this place is. Or anytime you read a report on public health or lack of access to food, there are all of these statistics about the Bronx, even in national reports and USDA reports. But that is not all the Bronx is. The Bronx is vibrant and resilient, and it went from burning to being on the cusp of blossoming. And I want to be an agent that talks about those things, the resiliency and the fierceness of the people in this community, including myself. So it doesn't make sense for me to go do this project someplace else. Do it where it's most needed and where I have the most impact, because I know this community.
Okay. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the more momentum you go, do you see you growing yourself growing the project outside the Bronx to other neighborhoods?
I definitely
or do you kind of want to stay a little more confined?
No. I think big. I'm a big woman who likes big things. So for me, 5-10 years, I see us having a rural outpost. I say I eventually want the Black Project to grow into a community development corporation. So we're thinking about intentional mother-led housing in communities. We have a processing plant, on farmland. So we're thinking about farm to table, farm to retail. Eventually thinking about education and land development. So yes, I definitely see the scope in 10 years of being a national. I don't know if I want to be still leading it in 10 years. There are a lot of other things I want to get into around food, and I just want to stabilize the Black Project, bring it to a certain level of reputation, and then I think it's really important for me to also to cultivate leadership as well. When I think about my own struggles to get to where I've gotten, there's a lot of things that I'm experiencing that have been, eye-opening for me, and a lot of times felt very lonely, and I've had to learn through trial and error. And I think the measure of a really great leader is to inspire leadership in others. So in 10 years, I would like to have worked with, enough people, particularly women of color, closely enough that someone else can be stewed into that position, and I can go on to the other things that I would want to do in my life with my family and my personal life and my career and all that kind of stuff.
So you're an agent of mentoring.
Absolutely.
And outside of the project, this one, the Brooklyn project you have, what's the Black Girl Project? Can I read something somewhere about it?
The Black Girl was really was the predecessor to the Black Project, and she got put on the back burner to do the Black Project because of such urgent need, and I was making headway in that. But when I talk about where I want to be in 10 years, it's certainly reviving. We still have the domain name for Black Girl. People still talk to me about it. It initially started out as an online magazine or a digital media space that was supposed to appeal to burgeoning professional women of color in the African diaspora, right. And creating a platform that will really highlight the differences between us, but use those differences as a way to really bring us together and feel more a part of a diaspora. Doing that work and simultaneously becoming an activist in my community sort of evolved into the Black Project. But, part of me, as I gain my own visibility, it feels kind of dumb to say, but as a brand, as Tanya Fields becomes a brand,
right.
I really think about how do we resurrect the Black girl and really start to take advantage of this digital space, because it has become a viable platform, right. for communication and for media, right? Print is almost dead. Right. So the apps that come in technology today, thinking about all the different platforms, Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I mean, it is eye-opening, right. And there's a whole new world out there that I think we can explore.
Before you touch on that, though, because you're so involved in social media, I know a big part of what drives your brand and also all the work you do is the fact that you're so heavily involved in social media, from Twitter to Facebook. I see at least 15 feeds a day from you on my Facebook feed.
Lord have mercy, now I'm starting to feel like a path.
It's good though, because you've really been able to kind of expand yourself outside the the Bronx itself and just New York. And I've talked to you before, outside of stuff that we've done with SPS. But I know that you've mentioned to me before that you've been sought after by brands from around the country, different organizations, different groups. You've been very successful in what you've done with social media. And kind of what's really interesting about that is SPS, you're actually, I would say, about maybe 90% of what demographic of our school is, because the majority of our students, they go to SPS, they are, they go to attend class through the virtual online campus. How do you see social media, from your perspective and from what you've done, how do you see social media affecting, educational growth and, just the evolution of technology? What does that look like in the future? What does that allow someone like you to do? And how can that help students that want to kind of start their own, organizations or companies, or kind of just, get outside the traditional business path and grow themselves?
I think in a world that is becoming increasingly smaller due to technology, and as technology is increasingly looked at as a normal part of our lives, I mean, even in low-income neighborhoods, 2 out of 4 households have at least one smartphone.
All right.
Right?
I think you said to me before the technology divide between rich and poor is
It's getting a lot smaller,
Right.
right? Like even like Metro PCS, Boost, all these folks are getting in the game, and even for Cricket and Smart Mobile and whatever else.
The funny thing that I remember that you told me before, you said that the technology divide between, I guess, the rich and poor is small because you can go to, I think it was you said to go to the social services. The guy staying in line has an iPhone.
That's right.
But the guy out in Kansas who's a farmer, those are the guys that kind of separate, are kind of marginalized because they don't want to have that technology.
Right, and I mean there's certain, but again but it's interesting because you start to see, even if it's reluctant, you're starting to see more and more people both in rural and urban. I mean, rural is still my experience in New York State, rural New York State. So, I mean, it may be different in other rural places, but in rural New York State, it is, I'm still seeing like older farmers who have criticisms of the way that the world is going or whatever,
Right.
but understand having at least a very small digital presence
Right.
can
Benefits them.
really benefit their business as farmers.
Right.
And that people want to have access to you, right? People no longer, I mean, they still want to be able to pick up a phone and call you.
Right.
But before they call you, they want to be kind of able to figure out what you're all about.
Right.
So even if you've just got like, like a Wix, web page up, it still benefits you to be in the digital stratosphere. And so people understanding that. And so even if you don't have a computer, smartphones now, you can still get a fairly decent $100 phone that connects to the internet, that you can put a Twitter app on, that you can put a Facebook app on. It's much easier to be connected to people now. And so the expectation is that we should all be connected. I think in regards to education, that really helps to, while the digital divide has gotten smaller, there still needs to be a ton of education, right, around how to use that digital stratosphere in a way that can enrich your life. So not just going to gossip blogs, not just going to Facebook,
Not just taking flattering pics of ourselves.
Right, not just doing selfies on Instagram, which I'm a big fan of, but also understanding that this gives you access to people in other countries, right? I mean, when you think about the Arab Spring and, how much just in a place that was definitely experiencing certain amounts of, repression, civil rights repression, freedom of speech repression, and still able to get messages out through Facebook, through Twitter, through the digital stratosphere. It was, it's debatable as to whether or not it actually, if that was the thing that catalyzed it,
Right.
but it certainly helped to encourage it. It certainly brought that revolution into the homes of people all across the world, and it inspired folks. Then you started hearing things about all other kinds of springs happening. They were referring back to their exposure to the Arab Spring.
Right.
So you take that and you think about exposure to now going to using the online platform to take classes. I went to school, had children, very difficult. This wasn't an opportunity that was here for me. I wish that it would have been. But being a single mom and running a business, having social media and digital platforms that are looked at legitimate ways to conduct a business has helped me exponentially. If I was not a child of this generation, I don't know if I would be as successful as I am turning out to be now without all of these different things, email, the ability to, Google Hangout, to be able to conduct a meeting with a vendor in another city,
Right.
From my computer and still be able to get that FaceTime and feel a sense of connection. So while, there are criticisms like technology has made us a lot more socially inept in terms of personal etiquette and things of that
Introverted.
nature. Right.
Right.
It also has catalyzed the momentum of us being able to be connected to one another and the things that we can do in our connectedness. So I feel that it really is important, particularly for me, in my opinion, for low-income people to have access to those platforms, because it can give them access to things that they may be shut out of if they don't have the resources to actually be there in person.
Right. So what advice do you have for students that want to use social media to kind of, maybe emulate a path kind of like yours? Because the more you look at it now, the traditional career path kind of graduating school, finding a job, working for 30, it's dead, for all intents and purposes. Technology has just changed things and just the pace of, different markets. 4 years ago, something called Twitter was invented, and no one knew what it was. And now all of a sudden we have, companies and businesses and celebrities, and overnight someone can go from being a nobody to being, complete, digital superstar overnight with these kind of with this emerging technology. So, and especially for myself, since I'm going through school right now, that kind of career path that we used to see that our parents went through, or our grandparents had, that's kind of disappearing now. So, kind of turning ourselves into brands and marketing ourselves. What kind of advice do you have for students that want to kind of follow that particular route?
I think, I'm living it right now. I guess I went from nobody to less of a nobody.
The internet says different about that one.
Right. I wrote this open letter around a traumatic experience that happened to me, put it on Facebook as a public note.
Right.
And I just don't know. I can't to this day tell you who started it, but before I knew it, it had like 65 shares. It was ending up in Twitter feeds. People from other countries were sending me messages. My friends were like, my friend who has a friend sent me a letter and said that I should get to know you. And I was like, I already know you. So, the ability to go viral, to have something that a project you're working on, if you're a brand yourself, if you're aspiring to be in the media or entertainment industry, for you yourself to go viral, a video you do can change the course of your life. It is so bizarre and absurd and enthralling all at the same time. Right. And it certainly floods us with folks that we probably would choose not to necessarily have access with on a daily basis. But I think that I think what sets people apart in terms of longevity, whether people get introduced to you and then suddenly say, I want to continue to get to know what it is you're doing and who you are, or if you just become like a Snooki, right, is...
Some people like Jersey Shore.
Right, and there are, but...
Right.
The people who are going to stick with it
Longevity.
And want to know where she is 5 years from now, 10 years from now, are the people that it resonates with.
Right.
Someone like me who doesn't feel that it's authentic, right? Probably not so much. Right. So I think for people, know who you want to be connected to.
Right.
Be your authentic self, right? But also in that, understand that because the world is a lot smaller and it's much more of a fishbowl now, that there are very few things that are even considered sacred anymore. So hold things for yourself as well. I think as I've had this journey, my Facebook from even a year ago looks much different than the Facebook that I'm doing now, right? As where I would get on there and go off on a tangent and use the F-bomb. Now I find myself writing out F. Like, this is so effing dumb. And I'm like, who is this voice? That's not what I would say.
Right.
But it's certainly like, I understand that now. I have children who look me up. They've heard about me in class. And so they try to find me on Facebook. And then a lot of my posts now is where before my security setting was like, everything was locked down. Now I know that there's a need to, that people feel like they want to be connected to me. So a lot more of my posts are public.
Right.
I understand that there may be a teacher in the Midwest or a pastor, from down south who's going to be looking for me. That is my audience. I want to be connected to them. So dropping the F-bomb in my status messages probably, while it may be authentic Tanya, it probably may keep me from authentically connecting to people who would most be served by my work and who I would most be served by getting to know and being connected to. So I think it's about finding balance. Understanding how much of yourself, how much of yourself do you keep to yourself without necessarily compromising who you are, and being able to adjust. And I think that not forcing it is really key too. I've come into contact with folks, particularly who are doing stuff in media entertainment, and they are like, this video has got to go viral, blah, 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 blah. And there's like this almost desperation to be acknowledged and to be sort of an internet celebrity or to be famous on a digital platform. And I just don't feel like it works that way. I mean, I think I've fallen into that pitfall as well. I've done events and I'm like, this has to go viral. I spend so much time on trying to make it go viral that I'm missing all the other opportunities to actually do the work that I needed to do.
Right.
And as soon as I was just like, this is who, like, write something, not concerned about who's gonna see it, what it's gonna, and just being open and honest and thinking about communicating a message that resonates with the folks that I'm already connected to. I feel like people picked up on that.
Right.
And next thing you know, people want to share things with one another. That's one of, like I said, this connectedness of the digital stratosphere. One of the biggest things is like, really wanting to connect. And part of connecting with that is sharing. So retweeting, sharing a Facebook status, all of those various things really help people to feel connected to one another. So if you're there, you're your authentic self, you're showing up, you are speaking the language they are speaking, and you are talking about the things that are important to them, and you are truly invested, people will share that. And it will happen. And when it happens organically, that's when you see the most longevity. That's when it goes just from, people hitting you up on Facebook to, CUNY calling you and asking you to do their commencement speech, or Oprah calling you.
Maybe even Gail.
Right, or Gail or Ilyana, whoever, calling you and asking you to talk about what you're doing. And you see your reach and your platform and your influence widen. And what influences you becomes a lot more broad now as well and enriches your life, and that's really important.
Okay. You just mentioned that you have to keep kind of a portion of yourself kind of distant, separate from your work. How do you kind of de-stress or relax or sometimes pull back when you have to?
I turn everything off.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's ever a time that I'm not stressed right now in my life.
Yeah.
But I know that there are times like Saturday was amazing. We had a really great event. I got to share a gift with folks that, who I didn't know but care very deeply for, because connected through this work that we do. And we raised, a significant amount of money for the mobile market. And then, Sunday was like back to life. And by Monday, I was like stressed out and just crying for no reason. And I was like, I'm just such a failure. This is so hard. And then it was just kind of like, when you're in that place, everything that you do seems to validate all the self-sabotaging voices in your head. And sometimes I think, with doing work and being so connected to people and being so accessible, itself can also be detrimental if you don't find that balance. And so sometimes it's just like, I'm taking like a social media break. Right? I'm only answering emails that are like deadline driven and priority. Right. I'm gonna take my kids to the park and go play with them, right? Because my whole world is not just my work, right? It's about being like, okay, today I'm gonna take a rose petal bubble bath. Or this all sounds very cliche, but
right.
These things, as cliche as they may seem, when you are in the thick of trying to do this work, no matter what it is, whether you become an entrepreneur or start, your own organization or work at a Fortune 500 company or are the deputy director of a small nonprofit, if you are really committed to doing work and there is work to be done, you will inevitably find yourself extremely busy. And you will be bombarded with these things that will stress you out. And as much as I talk about good food being, integral to good health, so is having a lifestyle where you are not constantly putting your body under stress, right? And your mental state controls all of these different functions in your body, right? So like I'm going through a phase right now, the last 2 weeks, I'm like, why am I breaking out? I'm eating all of these leafy greens and I'm having a lot of water, and it's like, but I'm also totally stressed out. Right. And so it manifests itself physically. So I think that people taking time for themselves, saying no is a very empowering thing. Learning when to say no. No, I can't do these things. No, I can't have this meeting. Again, it's balance. You don't say no to like a meeting where someone's trying to give you money, clearly.
Right.
But being like this.
Or when CUNY students decide to, call
that's
you
right.
and, ask for an interview.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, but I think knowing when your health and your mental well-being take priority, and being able to pull back is absolutely necessary. Right. In being a whole and healthy person. And so just finding the things that you like to do and doing them. saying today, if you have that, if you have the luxury to take a half a day at work, or to make sure that you take your vacation time and go on vacation, to go to places that you haven't seen or do things that you haven't done, and making sure that it really is a vacation, not a workation, not being connected to your iPhone or your Galaxy checking emails.
No. Sitting on the beach, putting sandcastles in one hand and an iPhone in the other.
Right, and also being like having boundaries in a world that is so accessible now is really important. Right. Telling people not to call you after a certain time, or people who want to have meetings with me on weekends. No, I say weekends belong to my children. Right. Absolutely not. Cannot do it. I am chauffeur, referee, all these other things on the weekends. That time belongs to my kids. Can't do it. Oh, but it's really, nope, can't do it on the weekend. And so then people start to understand that, and you start to create a structure for yourself in which you aren't setting yourself up for burnout. You aren't setting yourself up for a nervous breakdown. And I think that that's super duper important from the outset, to have a practice in which your mental well-being is absolutely necessary, because if you freak out, you can't get the work done effectively. I've been there. I've been in spaces where, I was going to school full time, raising kids, taking 18 credits, and working, right? Face breaks out in hives. I'm like...
How are your grades?
They were, it depended on what class it was, who the professor was. But yeah, some of those classes I ended up having to take over again. Yeah. And I remember just having a moment where I ended up at my parents' house with my 2 small children at the time, literally sobbing, could not stop crying. Like I am absolutely sure I had an anxiety attack. Yeah. And my parents had to take care of all of us for a couple days. And my mom was like, you can't do this. This is not a healthy way of functioning. And so I always remember sort of having that. It was like the scariest thing, probably one of the scariest things happened to me in my life. That feeling of having absolutely no control over how I was feeling as an individual. And so I think about that very, very low point of very, very high stress when I'm thinking about how do I set up a structure for myself that will contribute to me effectively doing my work, but also effectively taking care of me and the people who depend on me to take care of them.
I spoke to you when we were at the Dean's Dinner, and you said having a support system, a support network, is something very important and vital to kind of having, to building your kind of, just de-stressing yourself and kind of maintaining a nice sense of balance. What's your support network?
I have a really, really kick-ass set of parents who take my children, all 4 of them, at least twice a month, and sometimes more depending on whether or not I have to travel. I have some really great colleagues who have been almost like family, or have been like family to me, who will fill in for childcare. I have a great babysitter who is worth her weight in gold, who will come and watch my children at my home so that I can do the work that I need to do and know that my kids are taken care of. I have a support system that is, some close confidants that I've never met, but, talk to on Facebook and through email and through Skype pretty regularly. And, this campaign that we're doing with the mobile network, there's a woman in Atlanta, Rachel LeBlanc, who I've never met face-to-face before. We just talk on Google Hangout. She's done some PR work, sending out press releases for me. I've never met this woman in person. She was referred to me by another colleague. Right. And so, understanding what your support network is, who you need to be in your support network, and what that means. Because sometimes we say support network and we think that means everyone we can tell our deepest, darkest secrets to. Right. That's not true, right? A support network could also just be people who support you in getting the word out when you're doing your work, right? That's one piece of your support network. Then you've got the support network that that you can go to and talk to when things are really rough or you just need a confidant. You've got your support network that are folks in your family. You've got support networks of folks that you can reach out to that have access to certain types of resources, whether it be capital resources, financial resources, educational resources, right? So those are all a part of your support network. So I think having a good support network is intentional. It's not just something that just happens, right? At some point, when I was feeling burnt out and I was feeling really low and I was feeling stressed out, I knew I needed a support network, and I had to be really intentional about what it looked like. And so, like, it wasn't in the beginning like I created like a whole work plan around what that looked like, but it just started with like, I need to know people who have access to like elected officials, and creating relationships with those folks, and knowing that when I needed to support in leveraging a project and wasn't making the kind of headway that I needed to, I can make a phone call or send an email or a text message to those folks. Then it was like, I have children and I'd love to, but I cannot take them with me everywhere. Right. And so I knew that I needed to have a support network that would help me in terms of childcare. And so that was something, being a single mom, that was something I was really intentional about, starting to learn who did childcare, which friends of mine had children and liked my kids and wouldn't mind my kids coming over for a few hours to play with their kids while I ran errands. So I think support network, while it sounds like something that's very touchy-feely, it looks very different for other people. You have to be very insightful and understand what it is that you need support with. And you've got to be very intentional about bringing people into your network, your broad network, and then thinking about which one of those folks will help support you in the work that you're doing and your own personal development and growth. I think having a mentor is a really important piece of a support network. I think everybody should have a mentor. I don't care what you want to do. I think every person should have a mentor.
Who is your mentor?
I have a couple. In some
Top three.
I would say my mom and my dad.
Okay.
And a really good friend of mine who's like a big sister named Kolu Zigby, who also happens to be a program officer. Okay. And I met her just like, I need to get money and I don't know how to get it, and I feel like I'm hitting these brick walls, and then like literally like standing there sobbing, and her being like, oh my God, I totally need to help you. Right. And then from there, we just connected, and before I knew it, I was like, will you be my mentor? And she was like, wow, So it was a first, I think, for both of us, and it has been a extremely fulfilling relationship. She is like family to me. There aren't enough words in the English language to describe how much she has impacted and transformed my life, and I hope that I have the same effect on her, but love her dearly. And I know that if she had not been in my life as a mentor, as a confidant, as a friend, I would not have been able to make many of the gains that I've made in the last 3 years.
You agreed to do the commencement speech at SPS. Why? What made you consider it? What made you even agree to it, to opt in?
I graduated from a CUNY school. And CUNY is a very special place in my heart. It not only provided me an education, but it provided my children an education. I was able to bring my eldest daughter to the Early Learning Center at Baruch. And so I've always thought, I've always said when I get rich, or have access to rich people, I will make sure that I am, paying it forward. But even though I'm not rich and don't have access to rich people, I'm kind of like, what other ways can I get involved? So for the last year, I've been really trying to think about other ways that I can get involved in the CUNY system. And then it was like, you speak things into the universe, and if your intentions are righteous, the universe will manifest them. Right. So I'm thinking about this boom, and I got an email from Heather that was like, we've heard of your work and we looked you up and we'd like for you to, I know you're really busy, but would you mind? It was almost a little apologetic, and I don't know, it was like, hell yeah, I'm gonna speak, what? And like, this was probably one of the like,
I think that was,
no, totally, I swear to God, I was here, and I was, I'm in the workspace and the people around me, and I was like, what? Yeah, and like hit Heather back like pretty immediately. Yeah. So for me, this is like a huge accomplishment in my life. Yeah. Part of me feels like, oh my God, it's like, for where I am right now, it's kind of like you've arrived. Yeah. So I am very much indebted to the CUNY system for my ability to get education. I am, I didn't have a traditional college experience. I just couldn't. I was raising children and trying to take care of myself and borrowing a lot of money from the federal government to do so, and working at the same time, and trying to manage a household, and trying to raise these little babies, and trying to hold together a failing relationship. So even through all of that, I was still able to get an education, and that was because of the CUNY system. I think that CUNY is maximized dollars, right?
Yeah.
Very good. I mean, if you look at I think about some of the professors that I was exposed to in the CUNY system and their list of accomplishments, and the few that I do keep in contact with that continue to do amazing things. There's a wealth of academic knowledge and experience in the CUNY system. And I also just think too, I went away to college for a year, and that was a really important experience for me. I went to an historically black college, and that was really important experience. But then I also think about what it was to like have these various iterations of CUNY. I went as a day student, and that was very different than going as a night student. But the one thing that was always present through all of those things was diversity.
Right.
I was always, I was in classes with 55-year-old grandparents who were coming back for, to finish a degree that they didn't get to finish when they had when they had a child at 20 years old and got married, right? Yeah. Or like the 18-year-old, like, mom, who's like got a tiny little baby, but who's like, I'm still gonna go to school, right? So, or like the international student from, Eastern Europe or India who, is, on a student visa,
right.
and, I don't remember a whole lot of folks from my experience, but the experience itself, the diversity and the richness of that type of engagement has stuck with me.
Oh, yeah.
My dad has been a blue collar worker. He's worked for the MTA my whole life. He's been an amazing, has had an amazing effect on me in my trajectory in life. I'm pressing him every time I speak to him to retire. He could have retired. They have a mortgage on their house. But I'm like, you know what? You live in Connecticut. Think of all the money that you're spending just commuting back and forth and upkeeping your car. You have a pension. One of the few people left in the world with pensions.
Right.
Just retire. And he's so amazing. Everyone in my family agrees, like, my father's probably one of the smartest people you will meet, blue collar or not. He is just like a wealth of knowledge, well-read. He would be a great mentor to some of these young brothers out here who are struggling. I'm like, go back to school. Like, he had my sister, and then 4 years later he had me, and he just never finished his education. He was a musician. I'm like, Dad, you have raised 4 children by yourself. Dad was a single parent. Like, go back to school, take some classes part-time, pick up the acoustic bass again, like, get a degree in, like, I don't know, social work or something, and like, go work with young men. Like, these young men need it. My father's like this 5'11", 285-pound man. You think I'm imposing, you need to see him walk into a room. And he just has a presence about him and a realness about him and authenticity about him where he doesn't have to force being the cool dude in the room. He can just be who he is. But there's such a realness about his experiences that I think that he has a lot that he could offer the world. And I think the CUNY system gives people like my father that opportunity to do things that they may not have finished before, or do things in spite of many of the circumstances that they face, or do things because of many of the circumstances that they're facing, because they live in low-income communities, because they are from another country, because they are mothers who may be struggling to raise their children on their own. They know that education, even though we talked about how things don't look the way they look traditionally, where you graduate and good jobs don't just fall from the heavens like manna from the sky, but you still need the exposure to different networks. You need to get that piece of paper. You need to have those experiences to be more well-rounded and to give yourself at least a little bit of a fighting chance in a world that is becoming a lot smaller and much more fiercely competitive. And because of those things, people can still get an education in a system that will nurture them and support them. So long story short, other than doing like robbing a bank with Heather and you, you probably can ask me to do a whole lot for CUNY, and I would be more than willing.
People that want to get involved with your organization, projects you're working on.
So I'm all over the internet. Tanya Fields, South Bronx. You Google that, and all my business will come up. Definitely reach out to me like via Facebook. They can email me. Go to my website, The Black Project, which is spelled very ghetto fabulously. So it's the BLKPROJEK.org. Definitely, the name of the organization is a throwback to sort of like that graffiti sort of urban culture that I'm a product of.
I've seen your business cards, and it's very unique.
So they can find us through the website. They can find us on Twitter. It's twitter.com/The Black Project. They can look me up personally on Facebook and send me a message through Facebook. and we're always looking for people with skills. Things for us in the last year have gotten intensely busy. So even if people just want to come and volunteer to help make phone calls or do some outreach work for a couple hours during the week and never come back, there's still the need for that.
Yeah.
So they should reach out to us and tell us what they're most interested in, and then from there we'll figure out where an appropriate place for them to work with us is, or if they think there's a way to align themselves with our organization. As a small growing organization, like a one-woman show, part of me doing this work and being successful is learning to have aligned myself with larger, more established organizations. So, folks who are thinking that there might be something that the Black Project can sort of add to an existing program that they're running certainly are encouraged to reach out to me as well.
Okay. Quick rundown of the programs you're working on right now currently, and maybe the programs that you want to start in the future.
Okay. So right now, it's 2 tiers.
Right.
It's healthy hoods and holistic hoods.
Okay.
Holistic hoods is more of the sort of touchy-feely, safe space piece that we want to do, the culture piece. Then there's healthy hoods, which is really a sort of economic development, urban rural agriculture piece. So we are actually just putting in an RFP to get a proposal to get a significant plot of land to start Libertad Urban Farm, which will also feed into our mobile market project. And we are hoping in the next year or 2 to also have a storefront, sort of co-op, added value, hot food space that will be running as well, so that we can sort of think about production and then channeling production into our own sort of custom tailored for our community distribution streams.
Okay, wow. Well, you're very active in the community and all over social media. Just want to say thank you for sitting down with us today and giving us this interview. We really appreciate it. Your information, your contact details are all posted on the website, so people that want to get involved, they're more than welcome. Your information's there. And we just look forward to hearing your speech at graduation. I'll be there myself, so I'll be waiting. I'll make sure that, I'm looking out to hear, something good, and, I'm sure you'll...
Hopefully I won't disappoint. No pressure.
No pressure, no.
No pressure.